If you like listening to Warriors in Their Own Words, check out our other show, the Medal of Honor podcast. The link is in the show description. I'm Ken Harbaugh, host of Warriors in Their Own Words. In partnership with the Honor Project, we've brought this podcast back at a time when our nation needs these stories more than ever. Warriors in Their Own Words is our attempt to present an unvarnished, unsanitized truth of what we have asked of those who defend this nation. Thank you for listening, and by doing so, honoring those who have served. Today, we'll hear from Boatswain's Mate First Class Nelson Dubroc. Dubroc served in the Normandy Invasion with the Naval Combat Demolition Unit. It was their job to destroy obstacles with explosives in order to clear the way for the rest of the invasion.
Actually, we were drinking beer at the beer garden in Camp Perry one night. And then this guy, Jake Dumas, on the way back to the barracks, he said they were having a meeting and recruiting guys for demolition. And, maybe we ought to go see. So we went down there and listened to them and signed up. I found out then I wasn't going to be stuck in one place all the time. So that sounded pretty good. All we knew that we were going in demolition and whatever assignment they gave us. I thought of it as a privileged outfit because we were privileged. Oh, we had no duties like KP or guard duty or fire watches, nothing like that. And we had our Liberty card in our pocket. After the first part of your training, you could go to town every night, and we was first in the pay line, first in the mess hall line. We got good pay. Why? Well, they just told us from the get-go that we would be that way. That was some of our privileges for being in that unit. I guess to give you an incentive to sign up, because when you walk in guard duty in the snow or in boot camp, it wasn't too great, So that was something to look forward to, And then they also told us that you would travel a lot and you would be exposed to danger, but it wouldn't be for that long. Like the infantry, they went on and on and on and on. About, I'd say after the second day, we on a picnic. Our job was to place charges of C2, which was the explosive that we used, place them on the obstacles on the beaches, and then tie them into a ring main as the guys came around. Had a ring main tied into the main ring main and then blow these obstacles up. Oh, well, we went first through what they call Hell Week. That, 1 week of pure hell. And then later on, we learned about explosives, different formulas and power and stuff like that, and how much to use and all. And we had all these figures in our head, but we never had to use any of that. They just had the C2 in a little canvas bag with a hook on one end, a cord on the other end. Excuse me, and you wrapped it around the obstacle and tied it to the ring main. They weren't really dangerous. You had to be careful. I mean, you couldn't just, put fire on it. But as long as you didn't have a detonator on it, it wasn't all that bad. We used to play pitch and catch with this stuff. That it was like putty, like Play-Doh. Like at Normandy, all we used was C2. Now, if you wanted to blow a channel, we'd use what they call rubber hose, which had granulated TNT in it. They were about 20 feet long. Well, we had trained in England we went to Salcombe. We trained on the beaches. They had the obstacles like they had on the beaches, and we trained coming into the beach and hooking the stuff on the obstacles and all that. And we really didn't know it was going to be for D-Day. We were just training for that. And then about maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days before D-Day, they put us on the ship. And that's when my unit was on the Princess Maud. And then they get it, all the crews, every crew would get in a little separate huddle with his officer, and you kept looking at pictures of the beach. And you had pictures of all these obstacles and where they were and where they were set up, and everybody was assigned one particular job. You had, particular job to put on certain obstacles with the C2 explosives. Just another, we were going in combat, that's all. We was going in there to clear the beaches. We knew it was for real, but we didn't know how big an undertaking it was. They had told us that towards the end of the programming, I guess you'd call it, when they were showing us all these pictures and all, they told us that the Navy was going to shell the beach and the approaches to the beach and everything was going to be pretty well cleared up and the opposition was going to be minimal and all that kind of stuff, So we really wasn't too concerned, just another dry run. I remember when we had signed up for the thing, they had told us that the possibility of casualties would have been heavy. Maybe 2 or 3 out of 5 would get hit, get hurt. But actually for D-Day, I didn't, myself, it never dawned on me that I was going to get hurt. Or could get hurt. Of course, when you're 18 years old, you're pretty well shock-proof or invincible. You think you are anyway. One of the reasons I went in this thing, I was in the Seabees in Camp Perry. And then I found out that the Seabees might get put on an island or wherever, and you'd work there, and then you was just stuck there, And this thing here, they told us we'd be traveling around, and you wouldn't be stuck in one place all the time, and you get plenty of liberty, and you'd get paid well. Sounds good. Our primary objective was to clear like a 50-foot gap so that when the tide came in, we could guide these boats in through the gaps, and then they could get the infantry in, that much easier, so it wouldn't expose them to as much danger, I guess. But that was our primary focus. We came in there, I guess, about 6:30 or less, about that time, because the weather was so rough. Not one unit landed, I don't think, right on time or in the specific place that they were supposed to land. But it didn't make too much difference because all the beach was the same, all the obstacles were the same. And when we landed, we were looking at the pictures. The only difference is they were shooting at us. And then we just picked up, we couldn't get that rubber boat full of explosives off the LCM, so we just picked up as much as we could carry and just jumped in and started putting them on the obstacles. And the casualties in the front, they had Army people in the front of the boat. I guess maybe they were there to protect us. And when they dropped the ramp, they fired the guns right into the boat. And these guys were just laying there, so we had to climb over them to get out. And they couldn't pick that boat up. So we just picked up as much stuff as we could and went in with it. As soon as we came out of the landing craft, we started putting the charges on the obstacles. They had these Belgian gates, they called them, big gates set up like you see on where they're doing road work. They have these barricades and all. Then they had stuff looked like the jacks that the girls played with. They had these on the beach. You had to put it in a crook, blow that out. And it had posts with telemines on top of them and stuff like that. The pack was about this long and maybe 2 inches, like so. Then on one end, they had a iron hook, on one end. On the other end, they had a sash guard. And you just take it and wrap it around there and hook the sash guard in the hook, and it would stay there. Then you take the primer cord that was onto the firing cap inside the charge, and you tie it onto the primer cord. We got a bunch of it done right on the water's edge, and then we were going to blow it up, to pull the fuse. Actually, they pulled the fuse, and then Bill Vinion told me later the reason they didn't blow it, well, everything was snafu then. The Army was coming in on top of it, and you couldn't blow the thing with the Army coming in. You'd blew them up. So they cut the fuse, and then we come back later and put it back in there because it was, with the weather was so bad, you had the rough seas and all the confusion. It made it kind of tough. It's stuff flying all over the place. I mean, these it's about 4, 5, 6 feet high. Some of them, the ones way out in the water, and we'd put charges all over. And then that was all angle iron, for about 4-inch angle iron, I guess. And when that stuff started flying around, there was no place to hide. You just lay there and hope it don't come down on you. That's where they had this fire in the hole. You'd holler and they'd get out, those that could, get out as best they could. Some of them, you'd drag them out. I never did drag anybody out, but I know some people that did. You couldn't just leave them there if you could help it. You'd try and protect them. Like I say, when you'd fire it, this stuff was flying all over. Some would fly straight up, some sideways, and so maybe that would fall on you, or the Germans hitting you, with the machine gun fire and the sniper fire. But other than that, it was just, everything was danger, that's all. It was mass slaughter.
This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
We want to tell you guys a little bit about our podcast. Tom and I met in college, became best friends, and then teachers almost 20 years ago. Sometimes school just does not allow us to elaborate on the topics that we find interesting, like the real shark attacks that inspired the movie Jaws, or the real historical context to Indiana Jones artifacts. Where does cereal come from? Or are zombies real? Does Ben Franklin really deserve to be on a $100 bill? On our podcast, just like in our class, there are no stupid questions.
Just two friends having a lighthearted conversation about history, pop culture, and the context of current events.
Listen to History Teachers Talking Podcast from Evergreen Network, anywhere you get your podcasts.
History is the greatest adventure story. But does it ever leave you wondering what the women were doing all that time? This is Lori from the Her Half of History podcast, and the answer is that some women were seizing power, or escaping slavery, or spying for their country, or creating artistic masterpieces, while countless others were doing the laundry, getting married, and wondering why their clothes don't have more pockets. If you would like to hear the stories of women doing all of those things, check out Her Half of History at herhalfofhistory.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
I know it sounds like Hollywood, but you could look and you could see the stuff hitting the sand, the bullets hitting in the sand, or the shells, and then you'd run to that hole, or you'd run past there, and then you'd stop and try and hide behind something, or behind the bodies that were there already. And then when it come back again, then you'd go some more. They would sweep the beach back and forth. Plus you had the 88 artillery shells coming in, falling all over the place. If you happen to see it coming, then you could stop and hope it doesn't hit you, and then you'd move on. You figured you wasn't going to get hit anyway, so, yeah. I mean, strange as it seems, that's the train of thought you had, I guess, what you'd call it. I really don't know. And then, too, if you were putting it on a post, you'd get behind the post, then you'd hook it. Then you'd have to leave and go somewhere else, But still, it wasn't because you were a better soldier or better trained or, better, more efficient. You were just lucky, that's all. It wasn't your time. I didn't realize it then, but now I realize it. Everywhere you looked, you could see the fire coming from the beaches. And then on top of that, you had the artillery coming in, too, that would, which in a way kind of helped us because, in a backhanded way, I guess you might say, because they would hit the beach and blow some of the obstacles away, too. So that kind of helped out. Then it would blow holes where you could jump in. And that helped out. We were on the edge of the beach on the dune lines. Then we had a little protection. And then I realized that then you could see all the bodies floating in the water. That's when it dawned on me that this was for real. Because one guy said, then you realize they were using real bullets, But like I said, we were trained to a degree where you just automatically did what you had to do. This was serious business. It wasn't a game anymore, When you're in combat, no matter which part of it you're in, it's the same level. I mean, they're shooting at you and, if they hit you, your time's up, that's it. But I didn't think of it as a suicide mission, really. I was telling this guy, one who was a soldier, he must have had his helmet strapped on, under his neck, and it blew his head off. And he was laying on the edge of the water, and the tide would flip his neck back and forth, back and forth. And one of these guys, I guess it got to him. He picked up a wooden ammunition box and inverted and put it over the guy's neck so he wouldn't be looking at that, because we were laying on the beach. There was nowhere else for us to go. So we were just sitting there. And you had to see all that, and then you'd see body parts floating up and all. Then late that afternoon, I guess it was into evening, really. They started shelling the beach again, and we jumped in this slit trench they had. I guess a shell hit close to it or whatever happened, but the thing caved in on us and buried a bunch of us. And one guy never made it out. They couldn't get him out. And that was kind of bad. Because after we got him out, well, they got him out, really. They had to get me out, too. But they were still trying to revive him, and it was bad. That part there, I remember that. I've never dreamed about it, but I remember it. It's one of the things I remember. That stuck with you. You get that in the guy's head. I didn't find out till years later how long my neck was when I started having arthritis in my neck. And the doctor told me that's what it was. And I said, my neck ain't that long. He said, oh, yeah. And then I thought back to this guy. I can still see that neck just whipping in the water. In my particular unit, we had me, Waddell, Walter, Vinion, and Bruce. There were 5 and 1 officer, and the officer was the only casualty. He got shot. I mean, he wasn't dead. He was wounded. His wife is here today. He was wounded, so, but the rest of us got lucky, you know. After the beach was cleared, we didn't do anything, really. We were just set up camp in a field, a bivouac in one of these hedgerow fields, and just stayed there waiting for them to come get us, take us back to England. See, the deal was they were supposed to bring us in, we would do our job, and then they would take us out. As they brought the infantry in, they would take us out. But then there were so many casualties that we just stayed there. And they took which was the right thing to do. They just took the casualties out, and we stayed there. I mean, we must have stayed there 2, maybe 3 weeks. And then finally they brought us back to England. Well, we waited for the guys to come back from the hospital and wherever they were, you know, the survivors. And then we eventually came back to Fort Pierce and regrouped and formed Team 25. I think we had an effect because we, even though the casualties were heavy, I think we saved a bunch of people. They were able to get in quicker. Because the first guys coming in, believe me, these guys, the artillery fellas, they had this thing zeroed into a science, and they would hit some of the boats coming in. Some of these guys never made it ashore. They just, you know, the boats blew up. I'm talking about the infantry and everybody else. And by blowing these gaps in there, when the tide come in, they could bring these boats right up to the beach, where they could come out on solid ground and didn't have to flounder around in the water as much. Men, I did what everybody else did. They were called, they did their share, and they went in there and did what they had to do. And I think we helped out to hasten the end of the war. I really do. I mean, maybe we didn't, but I believe we did. The heroes are dead. Anybody will tell you that. We just ordinary people doing the job that had to be done, that's all. Another thing that it happened, of course, this didn't happen at Normandy. After we came back from overseas, they gave us a leave, I went home. And this man comes to, my dad had a mom and pop store. And this man comes in the store and he wanted to talk to me, so I go over there and his son had got killed over there. You know, and he was in our outfit. He got killed. And he kept asking me, the Navy had sent him a telegram or the War Department saying that he had got killed, but they hadn't found his body. And he wanted me to tell him that he was a prisoner or whatever excuse that he was still alive, you know. And I kept telling him, we accounted for all our people. You know, we know who's dead and we know who's alive. Nobody was taken prisoner, nobody. And the thing that really, then I think affected me more than anything else, it was his only son, only child. And when he left, he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, well, son, I'm glad you're back. You know, that kind of, you know, that affected me a little bit because, like I said, at the time I was only 18 years old. Thought I was invincible, but I felt sorry for the man, really. But other than that, we just did our job that we were supposed to do, like everybody else, you know.
That was Bosun's Mate First Class Nelson Dubroc. Thanks for listening to Warriors in Their Own Words. If you have any feedback, please email the team at kharbaugh@evergreenpodcasts.com. We're always looking to improve the show. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review. Warriors in Their Own Words is a production of Evergreen Podcasts in partnership with the Honor Project. Our producer is Declan Roars. Bridget Coyne is our production director, and Sean Rule-Hoffman is our audio engineer. Special thanks to Evergreen executive producers Joan Andrews, Michael DeAloia, and David Moss. I'm Ken Harbaugh, and this is Warriors in Their Own Words.
Greetings from Evergreen Podcasts. We're rolling out a listener survey, and we want to hear from you. The information in the survey will help us gather statistics and in turn make our shows more appealing to advertisers. I know most people don't like ads, but this is one of the only ways our shows make money and help keep their lights on. We promise it will only take a few minutes, but the impact on our podcasts will be tremendous. As a token of our appreciation, we'll randomly select one lucky participant each month to win an exclusive merchandise package from Evergreen Podcasts. Head to evergreenpodcast.com/listenersurvey to help a show and possibly get some free stuff for doing so. We can't thank you enough for the support. Now back to the show.